I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my novel Yams Do Not Exist. This part's called Ferment, Fermata, in February. A white rabbit darted through the fence and disappeared around the other side of the eightplex. Fermata looked out the window at the land reserve and made out two more rabbits doing their utmost to look like snow-covered rocks. They were actually prairie hares, or white-tailed jackrabbits, Lepus townsendi, the least social of all hares except when wooing a female in the breeding season. The resultant young are destined to be born in a form, a shallow depression in the ground. They were ordinarily timid, but this changed in February, prior to the month of madness that followed. They appeared rather stubborn in their desire to stay put and feed as much as possible on hidden plants and grasses. Best get on with it. One can only look out the window for so long. By the way, what was Trish up to? Putting it as gently as possible, she and our stoic friend, frail sad sack in some circles, had not yet reached any common understanding, nor perhaps would they in this world or the next one. The situation, if there had been much of one, had slowly tapered off, leaving within Fermata a grim dehiscence he had to salt nightly with the most craven imaginings to keep the bugger alive and kicking before, out of sheer forgetfulness and abscondence and whatever the opposite of abstinence is, he felt around for the little wound and found it scabbily healed over. Actually, he might have scratched at it afresh had he not received new intelligence in affairs that were not his. A new profile picture would have been bad enough, but the sizable upload of an elongated banner containing a reclining kiss was a real horror show. The nearly naked cow bone on the table was a surrealistic touch, to be sure. As for the young gentleman receiving his pleasure, the less said about him, the better. Fermata, having not dared to peep at her profile for over a month, reeled back and rolled about with a few hammy paroxysms of self-loathing. A friend of his would have called this occurrence old Cabbage, relegating the present to the past, although this situation looked like the starting point for a fermentation process he knew only too well. Rotten lovers and their rotting mouths, the decay of long-standing decorum and dying courtesy become cabbage at the mercy of salt, urging out the precious moisture after a period of 2 to 3 weeks. She would no longer be haughty goddess of the ground beans or furtive mistress of the night. The constituent body was now from dermis down to essential tissue, an uncooperative collective of cabbage layers. The size in the nearest retail outlet a size cabbage. The feet and hands round as cabbages. It was almost too much to bear, and that is why he took another breather to look out the window at rabbits, chewing something rather like cabbage. It would have been convenient for the fated sauerkraut to arrive, large as life, on the side of a bus that failed to pick him up, with his frustrated rage converting into passionate expression on the spot, which is to say in the parking lot of Southland Mall, but that was much later. The glamorous image of Ulmus Madison was not unknown to him. Fermata had first clapped eyes on her in a baggy t-shirt in a pie-eating contest one summer's evening, but he had been too preoccupied to notice how truly snout-fair she was. And besides, it had not been her finest hour. She had not obliterated the competition. He had only pursued her because of a faint mercenary streak that usually kept his bread buttered on the side he most preferred. Then, after accidentally catching her breathless finish of a local marathon at the end of a wooden footbridge we have already immortalized in our minds and hearts, well, the truth of his feelings would have been obvious to us, though they looked in absolute ignorance at one another, in a manner akin to the rabbits in February, who could not yet fathom the rapidity of March. We must forgive them, even when calling them out, as it was rather cold, and they were relatively indistinguishable faces lost under various layers. His light-hearted pronouncements reached her easily enough, and she did not balk at the prospect of helping him enjoy his own 15 minutes. Promises were made in the heat of given moments before they evaporated just as quickly. Each of them. They had a lot on.